Hi, my name is Dr. Paul Gabanich with Cincinnati Children's Sports Medicine and Orthopedics. In this module, we will review what concussions are, how often they happen, and who is most likely to sustain a concussion. Objectives. At the end of this module, you will be able to, number one, understand what a concussion is, how frequently it happens, and who is most likely to sustain a concussion. Number two, understand what happens to the brain during a concussive injury. Number three, recognize the signs and symptoms of concussion and know what to do when a concussion is suspected. Number four, understand why an athlete with signs and symptoms of concussion should not continue to play. Number five, know the risk factors for concussion injuries. Objective one, understand what a concussion is, how frequently it happens, and who is most likely to sustain a concussion. A concussion is a traumatic injury to the brain that can happen to athletes of all ages, genders, and sports. Approximately 2 to 4 million concussions happen each year related to sports activities. Younger athletes are more prone to suffer concussions, and they often take longer to recover due to differences in brain development. Objective 2. Understand what happens to the brain during a concussion-causing injury. A concussion happens when, due to an outside force, such as a blow to the head or body, the brain moves around inside the skull. This causes the brain to function abnormally. Objective 3. Recognize the signs and symptoms of concussion and know what to do when a concussion is suspected. Symptoms aren't always immediate and may change over time with activity. Symptoms may be very different from athlete to athlete and can last a few minutes to months. Concussions are invisible injuries. An athlete may look fine but still experience significant problems. An athlete does not have to be knocked out to suffer a concussive injury. 90% of those who sustain concussions don't lose consciousness. Headache is the most common symptom. An athlete may experience symptoms that others can't really see, including memory loss, dizziness, confusion, blurred vision, or sensitivity to light or sound. An athlete may also show signs which others can easily observe, including nausea and vomiting, slurred speech, drowsiness, mood changes such as irritability and fatigue. A concussed athlete may also have balance problems, may act confused or dazed, or may be unable to pay attention. If an injured player suffers head trauma or says or shows one or more signs of a concussion, immediately remove him or her from play so he or she can be examined as soon as possible by a medical professional. If an injured player has a neck injury as well, or if he or she lost consciousness, is lethargic, or experience severe or worsening symptoms, emergency medical personnel should evaluate them as soon as possible. Objective 4. Understand why an athlete with signs of concussion should not return to play. Do not return any athlete who shows symptoms of a concussion or who you suspect may have a concussion injury to the activity under any circumstance. If an athlete continues to push after a concussion, it may make symptoms worse and lengthen the recovery process. Avoid situations where an additional injury may occur. Sustaining a new concussion before the previous one heals puts an athlete at risk for serious or fatal brain injury. Objective 5. Know the risk factors for concussion injuries and understand how to prevent them. Encourage your athletes to use proper techniques when attempting certain risky plays, such as heading the ball in soccer, which is more likely to lead to a collision with another player. Plays on the ground or in front of the net, like a goalie diving for a save, are also at increased risk for injury. Of course, each sport has its own risky plays, and coaches should be familiar with those in their sport. Unfortunately, not all concussions can be prevented. Helmets, other headgear, and mouth guards have not been shown to be effective in preventing concussions. Proper recognition, diagnosis, and management of concussions can help to decrease both long-term effects of concussions and chances of re-injury. Finally, as a coach, you can support your injured player as he or she works through their healing and recovery under the guidance of a physician experienced in concussions. Managing the injury is a progressive process consisting of treating symptoms, returning to classes, and handling schoolwork, and ultimately getting back to physical activities and sports. Review of objectives. To review, we've covered what concussions are, how often they happen, and who is most likely to sustain a concussion. what happens to the brain during a concussive causing injury, signs and symptoms of concussion, and how to care for a young athlete who may have a concussion. We also covered risk factors, prevention, and returning to play after the injury. I'm Dr. Paul Gabanich with Cincinnati Children's Sports Medicine and Orthopedics. Thank you again for your attention to these important tips and for your involvement in youth sports.